Happy Migraine Awareness Month, everyone. The final day of Migraine Awareness Month. And today we're talking to Dr. Mike Freelander. He's the federal MP for the seat of Macarthur, which is in Sydney's southwest for the Labor Party. And he's also the deputy chair of the Standing Committee on Health, Ageing and Sport that is currently conducting an inquiry into how our new drugs get onto the PBS. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Freelander. How about you tell us a little bit about your migraine?
I am 68 years of age. And I get pretty infrequent migraine now, probably maybe 2 a year maximum. I've had migraine since I was a preschooler, and I get hemiplegic migraine.
So same time as me, yep.
Some pretty vivid memories of how terrible it was as a kid having this thing called migraine that no one could explain to me what caused it. No one could explain to me why I had it, and no one could explain to me how debilitating it was. And I actually repeated my kindergarten year at school because my migraine was so frequent and so severe. And I saw John Beveridge, who was then the professor of pediatrics at Sydney Children's Hospital. And he sent me for a test, which no one really hears about now, but it was called a pneumoencephalogram. And this was before the days of CT scans or MRI scans. And this is where they did a lumbar puncture. They drained some spinal fluid out and then injected air and sat you in a chair and spun you around and did x-rays in different positions to see the changes in the brain where the air was going into the ventricles. And by doing that, they could get an idea as to whether there was a tumour or other abnormality. Because they were worried because my hemiplegia, when I got a severe migraine, would last for over 24 hours. And I can remember falling off the school bus coming home from school because of the onset of the hemiplegia. Now, over time, I've worked out what triggers my migraine, and it's mostly when I don't do exercise and when I don't get out in the sun. So I think it must have something to do with my vitamin D metabolism. But apart from that, I can be relaxed, not stressed, and I can get a migraine. I can have the most stressful day and be fine. So it's unclear exactly what causes my migraine. Later on, when there were CT scans and whatever, and I had CT, which was fine. I saw Jim Lance, who was a neurologist at Prince Alfred Hospital who specialised in migraine. I tried all sorts of different treatments, the ergot preparations, painkillers, all that sort of thing. I found they didn't work that well, and I got a lot of side effects with them. So the best thing I found when I get a migraine is just go to bed, have no stimulation, make the room as dark as possible, drink a lot of water, and hope that it will resolve with sleep. And as I said, as I've got older, my migraines have become less and less frequent. But for people who don't have migraine, they don't really understand the pain and the horrible feeling you get. And I've had things like fractured my femur, had chest surgery, all sorts of things. Nothing is as bad as a severe migraine. And I say that quite confidently. So I understand why people like yourself who have ongoing and chronic symptoms just want a treatment that works.
Yep. It's a pretty simple thing. Just give us something that works.
Yep. And I know that a lot of the older treatments, as I say, don't work that well. I think a lot of people get side effects, and I've spoken to lots of people who have migraine about it. And lifestyle factors may be part of it, and I certainly think they are with me. It's not that easy, not that simple. And I don't know what you're like, but many people with migraine tell me that they actually don't know what triggers their migraine.
I know some, like you. I know some. I don't know all of them. And sometimes you don't do anything. It just comes on. Yeah.
Yep.
So what did you find worked other than just going to sleep? Have you tried any of the preventatives?
Not really, because my migraines aren't that frequent now. You know, I don't really need the sort of longer term preventatives. I did when I was younger, and when I was a kid, I had a whole lot of some of the older preventatives. You probably wouldn't remember periactin and things like that.
They still throw periactin at us sometimes.
Yeah, amitriptyline, which is an antidepressant that has an anti-migraine effect. At one stage, they even had me on a horrible antipsychotic called Mellaril that was used sometimes in severe migraine. I remember all that. They gave me side effects and didn't work.
Your experience with migraine, particularly from such a young age, is that why you went on to be a pediatrician?
Oh no, not really. That wasn't. In fact, I had an uncle who was a pediatrician, who was a great role model for me. And so I mean, I come from a sort of medical and dental family. So, but I think it made me aware though that sometimes what we do doesn't have a lot of science to it, and it made me more sympathetic to people who have chronic neurological problems like migraine and epilepsy and things like that. And I've always had an interest in neurological problems because of that. Yeah.
So how long were you a pediatrician for?
About 40 years.
Yeah, fair time. And then you went into politics. Why that move?
Because I think a lot of the issues that were facing my patients and are still facing my patients are not medical ones. And particularly in the electorate that I work in, Southwest Sydney, there's a lot of disadvantage. The issues that people were finding with things like access to housing, access to education, access to medical care. And I think that a way of changing that is along the political pathway. And I still do a clinic at our local hospital at Campbelltown. And, I'm seeing a lot of people with ongoing chronic medical problems who struggle to get access to care. And I can often help them a little bit in my political role as well as my medical role. So, I think that we do need some changes. And I'm a child of the 60s and 70s, and there were big changes when we introduced Medicare, originally Medibank by Gough Whitlam. And I think we're now at a bit of a crossroads where the Medicare system is not as good as it was in providing equitable care to everyone. And as you found, getting access to see a neurologist who specialises in migraine, often you have to do that privately. There's significant gap costs, there's long waiting times. And that's a real sort of access to care problem that we were seeing just prior to Medibank being introduced. So those issues require, I think, political solutions. And they're not easy, they're hard. If we're going to improve access to new medications, that requires funding. And if we're going to improve access to neurologists, again, we need to, make sure that we provide the funding for that. So they require political solutions, not necessarily medical ones. Yeah, so that's the short answer as to why I politics. But I still enjoy medicine, and that's my first love, and I still want to keep doing my clinic.
And it's great that you can still practice as a doctor, as well as serve the constituents of Macarthur, who I know are very fond of you. They send me emails and letters when you follow up. So I know that you are one of those good local members who does actually attend to the interests of constituents, like most MPs.
I think most MPs want to do the right thing, and particularly with medical things, sometimes they don't have a lot of exposure, and I think it's a good idea to go and visit. Everyone should visit their local MPs and talk to them about migraine and what they want. That helps.
It does help. All right. Do you have perhaps a tip for people who want to make migraine matter more to their local MP? What would you suggest they do?
Well, I think they need to contact them. And I certainly think a face-to-face meeting, even though it's a bit difficult in Sydney at the moment, face-to-face meeting with your federal MP and state MP as well is important. And also explaining the effect that migraine has on your lifestyle and on your family. Because I think that's something that we don't really pay enough attention to and give enough weight to when we're assessing, any of the treatment options. For example, when you have migraine, chronic pain and chronic symptoms like you do, it makes it very difficult to work, which means that you don't earn an income, which means you're more reliant on the government with welfare payments. Those sort of things have a big impact. Do you have kids at all?
I don't know. I lost all of my breeding years pretty much. So that's a whole nother sad story. But there are plenty of people in our community that do, and they can't take care of them.
That's right.
It's very sad.
Yeah. And it has a real effect on family life and the health economics of that. I don't think we pay enough attention to. I think that's been pretty clear during our inquiry. So, I'm keen to see what we can do to try and make things better. I'm aware that, we don't want to set expectations too high, but on the other hand, I think the patient's voice and the family's voice needs to be taken into account a lot more. And I always think if you can get a number of MPs involved and understanding it helps with any changes, because part of the problem for us is that we will do a report and we'll come up with some recommendations. But then unless there is a bit of a push, it's possible the health minister can just leave that in a cupboard. And so it's going to rely on other MPs, not just the people on the committee, to push this along.
And it needs to be pushed from both sides of politics, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Because these things often go beyond the lengths of governments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we did an inquiry early last year and the year before about allergy and anaphylaxis, and that report had some good recommendations, but the present health minister has sort of put that on the back burner, and I suspect it's going to require a change of government before we get much action. So even though the report may not get an immediate response, we do, as part of the health committee, review reports from previous committees and try and get some ministerial action, even if they're for a few years ago. So, I get on pretty well with Greg Hunt, and I think he's a decent guy, and I'm hopeful he'll act on our report now. But if he doesn't, it doesn't mean that it's always lost. And, particularly with the new migraine treatments, it's likely there'll be an ongoing number of new treatments becoming available.
Yeah, I've said a couple of times I'll still be fighting this fight in 10 years.
Look, I know you had some concerns about the department. I don't think it's necessarily all their fault. I think that, sometimes there's not enough communication with the bureaucracy and the health department and the minister's office that it makes it difficult. And I think one of the things our report can do is make that a bit simpler and a bit quicker. And I think sometimes the companies, because Australia is a fairly small market, don't, present things in the way that they could. So I think that there are options to do it better. I definitely do think so.
We look forward to you finding them.
Good.
All righty. Well, I'm very glad that you don't have too much hassle with your migraine these days, and I hope you have lots of crystal clear days ahead. Thank you for making the time to talk to us during Migraine Awareness Month.
and I hope you get on a treatment that can work and doesn't cost a fortune. So it's good.
Thank you.
It will happen. All right. All the best.